So we're ready to roll. So welcome everyone, and thank you for taking a little time out of your day to join us on this first part of a three-part webinar series that we're doing together, and I'll have the Dilignet guys introduce themselves in just a moment. My name is Wally Mead. I'm a Principal Program Manager with Cireson. I've been with Cireson about 3.5 years now after spending 22 years at Microsoft, primarily in the configuration manager space. So I'm fairly familiar with the product, and I've been around for a long time. And it's a pleasure to be here. So I'm guessing since this is for the APAC audience, you guys are all in the Australian market. So good morning to you. Like I said, it's late afternoon here for me on Monday. It's Tuesday morning for you guys. So our part one is on what's new in training and enterprise client management. We're going to talk primarily about Configuration Manager, current branch, the last couple of releases, and then spend a little bit of time talking about the newest product that Cireson has to help you extend your IT use of Configuration Manager, being the Cireson portal for Configuration Manager. But we're co-sponsoring this webinar series with Dilignet, so I want to give Peter a chance to introduce himself and his team and what they can do for you guys out there. So Peter?
Yeah, thanks, Wally. Just way of introduction, my name's Pete Lillywhite. I'm the CEO of Dilignet, and I'm also with Joseph Formica, who's our pre-sales architect. Just for way of introduction, Dilignet is a specialist client management organization where we specialize in System Center and client deployments. Obviously, Windows 10 is being topical in the market at the moment. We're multiple partner of the Winner Awards at Microsoft in this competency, and we've pretty much deployed Config Manager to over 100 enterprise clients across the Australian region over the last 6 or 7 years. So we're quite specialized with Config Manager and also quite specialized with, obviously, client deployments of Windows 10. So I'd like to thank Cireson for allowing us to join in today. Obviously, Cireson is a valued partner of Dilignet because they're very similar to us, but just in a different region. So I look forward to answering any questions as we go and look forward to this webinar series. So thanks, Wally.
Thank you, Peter. And again, welcome to all of you who are joining us. And again, thanks for taking a little time out of your day. Let me do a couple of housekeeping type note of things for us. There we go. Just you guys are all in listen only mode. So if you have any questions, you won't be able to verbalize them. You'll have to go ahead to the questions panel there that you have in front of you in the GoToWebinar interface. Absolutely feel free to type up questions. I love getting questions from people when I'm doing these presentations, so it helps make it a little more, I'm not going to say interactive because you're not really interacting as much as a live presentation, but it helps make things a little bit more exciting. Now, I will hold the questions till the end, just so I don't get distracted. But please do type them in at any point in time. Just please give a little context to it. Don't just type up a question saying, why not? Because by the time I get to the end of the presentation, I'm not going to know where you would have typed why not. So just ask a little more explicitly. This presentation is being recorded, as you heard me mention earlier, and we'll get it posted up to our Vimeo site. We have a site on vimeo.com, vimeo.com, and go to /Team Cireson, all one word. And we have well over 100 webinars, videos up there as we do work around the System Center space as well. So primarily around our products, and I've done a bunch of webinars for us around System Center. So with that background, let's go ahead and jump on in. So I'm going to start the first part of the presentation on what's new in Configuration Manager. So I'm going to only talk really about the current branch release. And what I want to do is just real quickly provide a recap of the two most recent editions. So the two versions that have come out this calendar year, 1702, 1706, just talk about them, real high level bullet points as quickly as I can, then do some demos for you in with that, and then jump over to the Configuration Manager portal portion of the presentation. Okay, so new features in 1702. You guys may already be familiar with this because hopefully a lot of you are already up on 1702, but the product group did deprecate support for some of the older server operating systems as well as SQL Server. So just make sure that you stay current on things. And there is a great document up on the on the doc site called the deprecated features support. And that will let you know any features, any operating systems that have been removed. As you see here, Windows Server 2008, Windows Server 2008 R2, as well as SQL 2008 R2. Now, the one caveat there in that lower bullet is that you can still use those two old operating systems as a distribution point, just not any other site system roles other than a state migration point if you're on Windows Server 2008 R2. Okay, now new features in the product. I put the one up there, the top bullet, because it's on top because I think it's the most valuable feature in 1702. And that is that software update points are now boundary group aware. Prior to 1702, you were not allowed to put software update points in your boundary groups, which meant for a lot of people, they had to put secondary sites out in their environment just to be able to control the client traffic for scanning for software updates to a local software update point. There was some things you could do with local policies, but it wasn't necessarily as easy to do as you'd want. So now that you can put them in your software update points and boundary groups, it makes it a whole lot easier and makes it a whole lot more efficient. And now you can start getting rid of those secondary sites in a lot of scenarios. And I'll show you that in the demonstration coming up in just a moment. A couple other things, in-console search improvements, providing feedback directly from the console. And I'll show you this in demo as well. It's very, very easy to kick off a user voice item now to respond to the product group about things that are working or not working. Data warehouse service point was added as a pre-release feature, and I'll talk more about this in 1706 because it's been expanded in 1706. There's a cool tool called the Content Library Cleanup Tool. This allows you to identify and then remove orphaned content from distribution points. And I've got a guy up here in the Seattle area. He ran it on in his environment, and he wound up cleaning 67 gigabytes of disk space from orphaned content in his distribution points. So very cool. The bottom one, Pure Cache, now has some analysis capabilities to not provide itself as a source of content if it's in the Pure Cache servers in low battery mode, high CPU mode, high disk utilization, no available content or connection, excuse me. And they've added 3 reports now specifically around those in the software distribution content folder. Another cool one at the top of this slide is the ability to designate and control the behavior of which you can term as blocking programs. And I can show you this in the demo coming up as well. What you're allowed to do now is when you want to try and install an application, you can designate another program if it's identified as being running as a blocker and not allow the application to install because there's other executables running. And then depending upon how you deploy that application, you can have some controls over how that blocking behavior is handled. Hardware inventory now reports UEFI startup status by default, so that's very cool. You get that information right away. Lots of OSD updates. So this slide and the next slide are actually all on OSD. So they've increased the application limit from 9 to 99. So in a single install application step, you can now have 99 applications. You can multi-select applications, whereas before you had to do a pick and choose one at a time. On standalone media, you can set an expiration so it stops working after a period of time. You can add package application content to your media as well, which you couldn't do before. You can specify a configurable timeout on your auto-applied device driver step, which is valuable for those that have lots of device drivers, which we know some people have over 100,000 device drivers, so they would always get timeouts. The package ID is displayed in the task sequence steps. So when you're looking at a task sequence, you now see the package ID as well as just the name of the package. That's kind of cool. We'll track the Windows 10 ADK version and only allow you to modify boot images for that specific ADK version. You can no longer change your default boot image source path. You can restart a failed task sequence. So that's a scenario, let's say you do a Pixie boot and you start a task sequence from the Windows Pixie screen and it fails because no content or no access with the network access account. Well, before you had to reboot your computer and start over again. Now you can just hit a previous button to go back to the previous step. Next bullet is kind of interesting for a lot of people, the ability of configuring any task sequence as high risk. So way back in 2012 release of Configuration Manager, they added in high risk notifications. So it would block the use of the built-in collections like all systems, which is good. and then limit your use of some of the other collections depending on size of number of members. Now you can do that for custom task sequences. Those are not OSD based. And you can have customizable messages to your end user, as well as you can notify them of the expected download size and runtime and whether reboot's required and so on. Lots of updates in mobile device management area to try and make the hybrid configuration, being Microsoft Intune integrated with Configuration Manager, more on par with the standalone version of Microsoft Intune. So I won't go through all of these because there's a lot of them here, but basically to get it easier. So one of the things is easier targeting of Android and iOS platforms. In the past, you had to designate the specific version of iOS or Android. Now you can just say Android or iOS. The support for multiple volume purchase program tokens. Support for iOS volume purchase program for education. The ability of deploying volume purchase iOS apps to devices where before it was only to users. Here, device threat monitoring, new dashboard in the console, as well as an attribute in the devices view and a tab on the device to let you know if your mobile devices are in having threats on them. You know, very much like the Windows Advanced Threat Protection and so on. Now you have it for devices with, I think it's 3 different vendors now that integrate with it. And then lastly, for 1702, some cool changes to the updates and servicing feature, which is how you keep Configuration Manager current branch up to date. So they moved it outside the cloud services node, so it's a root level node because some people would forget where to find it. It only now downloads the most current build available. So let's say you're on 1606 and now you hooked up to the internet, and now in the old days it would have downloaded 1610 and 1702, 1706. Now it's only going to download the most recent build. So that's kind of nice. You can download the other ones if you want to, but there's no reason to, so it's cumulative. Now the cleanup of older content has been enabled, but it doesn't happen until 1706. So you see that in my 1706 demo coming up here momentarily. So now let's spend a couple of minutes talking about 1706 updates, and then we'll jump into some demos for you. Client Pure Cache, which was introduced, I think in 1610. It now supports Express updates for Windows 10 as well as Office 365. You don't have to do anything to get that support, just enable Express updates and Client Pure Cache. The Client Pure Cache no longer uses the network access account to authenticate requests from peers. So that makes it easier for multi-domain forest environments. The data warehouse that I mentioned in 1702 that was a pre-release feature, it's now a full feature. So it's not considered pre-release anymore. So it only took one build to get it in there. So that's a feature if you want and you need to maintain content, some Configuration Manager data, longer than Configuration Manager would by default, which sometimes is 90 days, sometimes 180. I think the longest it maintains any type of data is a year. And some people, governmental or other regulatory compliance, had to keep things longer than that. So they now have a data warehouse feature where it will offload some of that data to the data warehouse, which doesn't age out. It doesn't get purged and cleaned up like the core database does. SQL Server always on availability groups support asynchronous commit replicas, which makes it a little bit easier to do some of the restore capabilities if necessary. If you guys have ever had a problem with trying to download a new build of Configuration Manager and got stuck in a downloading state, then there's a new tool out there called the Update Reset tool that's in your tools folder when you install or on your CD that allows you to reset that. Basically, it does a registry update like you could have done through product support. It just does it locally now. And then it would restart that download for you and complete it the next time. Support for high DPI consoles, like a Surface type scenario. And a cool feature here as far as the software update points and boundary groups, they were added in 1702, but that was without fallback configuration. So you're only ever going to use the software update point you had in your boundary group. Now it has fallback capabilities. It still just does relate to the 2-hour fallback period, which I'll talk about in the demo coming up momentarily. A new wizard to go ahead and help you integrate with Azure Active Directory. So there's a single wizard that will help you configure numerous different things in Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, that you used to have to run individually before, like Cloud Management Gateway or the OMS Connector or Upgrade Readiness or Windows Store for Business and some others. So now there's a single wizard that configures Configuration Manager with Azure Active Directory, so you don't have to repeat that process for all these different scenarios. A bunch of new compliance settings for Windows 10 mobile devices, as well as some device compliance policy rules. Now, one of the things that people are most excited about in 1706 is the ability now to run PowerShell scripts directly from the Configuration Manager console. So you've always been able to do this, but it was always through a package and program. So you'd create a package and have a program that was running your PowerShell script, and then deploy that content out, or distribute the content to your distribution points, and just deploy that package and program out to your clients. Well, now it's very simple. Now it is a pre-release feature, so you have to enable that, and I'll show you how to do that in the demo. But you just import a script or create one live inside the Config Man console, and you go to the Software Libraries node, then Scripts. Then you could edit unsigned scripts in the Config Man console as well. You approve them if you want to deploy them, so you mark them as approved. And then you just go to a collection, right-click, and say Run Script. You'll pick the script you want to run, and it pushes it out through the fast client notification channel. So basically, immediate response down to the client. And then there's a new monitoring workspace node called Script Status that will let you view that script status inside the console. So very cool. So it just saves you that process of creating the package and program or your application with deployment types and distributing that content and then doing the deployment. It's a whole lot easier. And I'll show you what that looks like in the demo. A bunch of new stuff for mobile application management. So being able to block screen capture on Androids, disabling your contact synchronization, and disable printing of work or school data. Android for work, you can now block copy paste between work and personal profiles. And Device Guard lets you do trusted configuration for files and folders. A couple of things in software updates. They've reduced the time to download Express updates. So Express updates started way back in 1610. It got a little bit better in 1702, but the problem was it was really slow to download those updates by clients. And the product group spent a lot of time in 1706 to improve that. So now Express updates are actually usable in the product. So now you can go ahead and take advantage of that. Management of Surface driver updates. Cool, a lot of people have Surface devices and they manage those. So now you have the ability of synchronizing through the software update feature Surface drivers and then deploying them through the software update process in Configuration Manager. So you enable as a classification in your SUP configuration. Now the gotcha here is that your SUP has to be on Windows Server 2016 to enable this to work properly. A couple things on Windows Update for Business. Policy node is now there, so you can set your current branch for business for your quality or feature updates, and also some click to run user experience to pop up notifications for users, letting them know, hey, things are happening. You have to have a reboot or whatever the scenario is. Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and kick over to the demo and show you a few of these things live. So my environment is running 1706. So if I go here and just go to About Configuration Manager, you will see that I am running 1706. So that's important for this. Here's the feedback node. So you can see it right up on the ribbon. So you just pick any of these nodes and you can go to the ribbon and do feedback, or you can do a right click and there's a feedback, and that will kick off a user voice item back to the product group. So very, very simple, easy thing to do. Let's go ahead and look at boundary group configuration, because that affects everybody. Well, I guess right, as long as we're going here, you see right away, here's the updates and servicing node. It's not inside cloud services anymore. It's right underneath the overview node. So that's kind of cool. So it makes it easier for you to see, find your updates. And you can see that 1706 is installed. Now, if I go here to File Explorer, Windows Explorer, and then if I go to my location where I have my site installed, which I know you don't install in the program files in Drive C, but I do for demo purposes. And here's my easy setup payload folder. Notice how empty it is. There's only one build here. prior to 1706, which you guys would see is probably something more like this. A whole bunch of different folders in there that was taking gigabytes of disk space, like maybe 10 gig of disk space on your hard drive. And so now that's cleaned up for you with the 1702 implementation of that, and then 1706 actually utilizing that feature. So that's kind of cool. Anyway, boundary groups, hierarchy configuration, boundary groups. I've only got one. Let's go ahead and create another one real quick, and I'll say Australia. And excuse me, let me add a boundary in here, and I'll just say it's its IP address range. Let me add a distribution point, and I'll just add member. Okay, so now what happens is my main boundary group is going to be local clients and CHQ. So now if I go to properties of it, you see I have a couple of distribution points here, and don't get hung up with the fact I got the same DP in both of them. In fact, I can go ahead and just, I guess I can clean it up and remove that for you to make it easier. But now you have this relationships tab. On the relationships tab, by default, there aren't any. So I'll go ahead and add a relationship to my Australia boundary group. And I'll say after 10 minutes on my distribution point, I want to allow fallback. And let's say I'll do the same thing, 10 minutes on my software update point. So let me go ahead and set that. Now let me go ahead and add one to the default fallback. And I'll say that's going to be 20 minutes on both. Okay, so what this does for me now, let me zoom in here. So when my clients are in their local boundary group, which is the one here in the background, local clients in CHQ, they're going to try and find content, whether it's for my distribution point or my software update point, in this case scanning, for up to 10 minutes. So they're going to search on the local resources for 10 minutes. If they can't find what they're looking for, then they're going to go ahead and fall back to any distribution points or software update points in this boundary group, Australia. And they're going to search for another 10 minutes. After a total of 20 minutes, if they haven't found the content or the software update point they're looking for, then it's going to go ahead and again fall back to any DPs in this boundary group or any software update points in that boundary group. So it gives you a little more control, granular control over when clients expand their scope of searching for content or software update points. Now, I say software update points, and even though you can go in here and configure, I go to change, it says 10 minutes or 20 minutes, whatever's appropriate, it still does do that 120-minute default. So it's always going to be those 4 cycles of 30 minutes of errors. So work towards 120 minutes, 2 hours, and then it will use as fallback period. So they need to clean that up, but at least it now helps give you a little more granular control over what's happening. Okay, let's go ahead and go to updates and servicing. Let's go to features. And you see got a whole bunch of features here that are not turned on. Like I want to do surface driver updates. And I right click and I'm not able to turn them on. Any of these pre-release features, you have to consent to using them first. So you go to site configuration, you go to sites, and then you go to the hierarchy settings node option, and you click this one button in the middle, checkbox in the middle, it says consent to use pre-release features. So you select that. Once you select that, click OK. Now you go back to the features node, and now I can go ahead and take service driver updates. I can right click and turn on. It tells me it'll be available after I restart the console. And if I want to do the create and run scripts, which I want to show you, I'll turn that one on. I can turn it on. Some other ones, like if you want the, for example, the data warehouse service point, you can go ahead and select it and turn it on. And right now it's turned off. So you just have to turn on whatever features you want. If they're pre-release, you have to consent to them. Release features, you don't have to consent to. Now that I've turned some on, I have to close the console and then restart the console. And then that will, as we call it, light up that feature in the configuration manager console. So now as the console starts back up, if I go to administration, I now go back to, let's say, site configuration, go to servers and site system roles, take my server, add, excuse me, add site system roles to it. Then we'll see the data warehouse service point is now enabled. So now I can go ahead and turn that on, and I just say I want to put this on a server called primary, and I'll just call it DW. Oops, no, I did the default instance, sorry. Primary dot CiresonDemo.com. And then I can just schedule how often I want synchronization to occur, so 3 a.m. on a daily basis. And that's going to go ahead and install that site system role for me. So a pretty simple, easy thing to do. Now, the main thing I turned on there for you was scripts. So let's go ahead and do that scripts feature. So I go to Software Library, and now you see a scripts node here that you didn't have before. So I can go to scripts. I don't have any scripts, so I can do a create script. And I'm just going to go ahead and do an import. And I should have a script here sitting down in this folder, remote manage. There's a PowerShell script, import it. I'll just call it demo. Click next, click next, click close. Now the script's there. I can't deploy it because it's not been approved yet. So it has to be approved. So it says a state is waiting for approver. So right click, and I'm not allowed to approve it. By default, you can't approve your own scripts, but you can change that setting if you want to. And for demo, I will, so I don't have to log into somebody else. I'll just go down here to this checkbox at the bottom. Do not allow script authors to approve their own scripts. Turn that off. Now if I go back here, I can now approve that script. I can verify it all looks good and say approved. Need for demo. And now that the script's been approved, you'll see it says approver and comments, and it is approved. I can now go to assets and compliance, go directly to a device collection, and if I say like all servers, right click, and I can do a run script, pick an approved script, which I only have one. So no content distribution, no creating a deployment. All I do is import the script or create one. I go ahead and approve it, and then I go ahead and run it. And that uses, again, that fast client notification channel, so it's pushing that out to my target collection automatically. And what's going to happen is I go to the monitoring workspace, and momentarily, I'm going to go ahead and get some status back here. In fact, you see script version 1 primary has already come back with success. It already exceeded on primary. So that's kind of cool. It's immediate satisfaction on that. So it's great for things like when you have like the WannaCry. If there's a script to turn off the SMB 1.0, you could send that script out and prevent that issue from occurring or expanding any further. Okay, let me just show you a couple more things real quickly here. I think I turned on Surface drivers, and if I did remember to do that, then I go to Configure Site Components, Software Update Point. And here on Update Files, here's where you can say download files for Express updates for Windows 10. You can turn that on if you want to. But for Surface, I just go to Classifications, and down here at the bottom, I have Classifications. Oops. And it says to use this, you have to be on Windows Server 2016, which I'm not, but I can still go ahead and enable it. You just go to the Classifications tab, and now you have that. So kind of cool. And the last thing let's show you before we kick back over is let's go to Software Library. Let's go to Operating Systems. Let's go to Task Sequence. And now here's a custom task sequence I have. Let me do a right click and do an edit on it. And there you see it's just running setting a variable. But now if I go to Properties, here you can see down at the bottom, I can specify the if restart required and download size and estimated runtime. This will appear to the end user in Software Center, so they'll know, oh, I don't want to run this script right now because it's going to take too long. So that's kind of cool. But right up here, I can say use custom text if I want to. I can also say on user notification, this is a high-risk task sequence, and I can specify a whole bunch of instructions and custom text here that I'm allowed to present to the end user in Software Center. That even the user notification stuff, your custom text works for OSD-based task sequences as well. So you get the ability of doing the custom text. It's just that now you can mark any task sequence if you want to as a high-risk task sequence. So this is a high-risk task sequence, and then you can specify custom text. And here you can see, here's that thing we talked about with the showing your package ID as well as the package name in your content. Some people are more easily able to find their content by by ID as opposed to by name. So that's why we added that in. We being the product group, not me there. So. Okay, so that's just a few little things there to whet your appetite on what happened in the last couple of releases. So if you're not up to date on Configuration Manager, not at 1706, highly recommend that you go ahead and jump up to 1706 because you'll find a lot of value in it. And it's a pretty simple process to go ahead and update. All you got to do is go to your Updates and Servicing feature, take 1706, it'll say ready for install. Just right click it and say install update pack, walk through the wizard, and in a half an hour it's all done, a little over half an hour generally. All right, so again, if you guys have any questions on that, go ahead and type those into the questions panel. I'll handle those in a little bit. But okay, so there's a lot of other things available outside of the configuration manager space. So when you're looking at mobile devices and Azure Active Directory and a lot of things that they've been doing in the product group there, including that autopilot feature is coming out. So a lot of other things in the enterprise client management space, but those are some cool things in the configuration manager product itself I wanted to talk about for you. Okay, so now let's go ahead and talk about, you saw some of these cool features here and things that might want to incent you to get further along with Configuration Manager. The downside to it is that if you want to extend your reach of Configuration Manager into your IT team, it can get a little bit harder because of the fact you want to control who has access and what features they have access to. And so that makes it somewhat difficult at times. So what we've created as Cireson is a product called the Cireson Portal for Configuration Manager. So just real quickly, Cireson, we're a software and services company, started doing services around Service Manager, created some apps around Service Manager to help with some of the usability gaps. Found people really excited about those apps we were creating, so we're doing a lot more of the software space now and leaving the consulting services primarily to partners like Dilignet and so on. So we try to do a whole lot of app creation. So we got some in service management around Service Manager, got a great asset management technology that the current one takes data from Configuration Manager, dumps it into Service Manager so you can have true lifecycle management of your hardware and software assets. And then Configuration Manager, we have 4 free apps that are available that you can download from the Cireson website today. And then the one we're going to talk about here in a moment, the Cireson Portal for Configuration Manager. We got, I think it's now 65 countries around the world that are 1,200 plus customers are spread around. We still do a lot of consulting, but again, primarily you'll be going through partners. And we're really proud of our 99% renewal rate. So people that join in with us see the value and they renew their services with us. And then just some of the customers that we have are all around the world. So Microsoft's one of our customers, and Dell is, whether it's in manufacturing or legal or education, lots of different customers around the world. And then almost all the products we have sit on top of System Center, which can be run either in a Hyper-V or physical environment locally or Azure cloud environment, so that's fine. Okay, so the Cireson Portal for Configuration Manager it was designed to make your work life easier, helping you to not have to do everything in Configuration Manager. Let some other people help, basically spread the load or take some of the burden away from you. So we have a user experience. It's a web-based portal. So you're not tied to an installation of the Configuration Manager console. That you have to keep up to date when Configuration Manager versions change, like 1702 to 1706. You have to update the console. Since it's a web experience, when an update comes out, which we just released a new update on Friday to the CMP, as we call it, you just go and update one location, and everybody takes advantage of it through an intuitive web portal that's available through your browser. What we like to do is we're trying to take the data that we think is important from Configuration Manager and expose that in an easier to use interface that's more intuitive for your IT staff so they don't have to be trained on the complexities of the Configuration Manager console. It's easy for them to pick up the CMP and use it, especially in your service desk, help desk scenarios where those people kind of turn over fairly frequently. So give them the data they need to get their job done, but don't overwhelm them with all the data that Configuration Manager provides. Configurable security allows you to control which users have access to which features of the CMP, which you'll see in my demo coming up here in just a minute. Not only do we expose the data that Configuration Manager has that we think is important, but we also like to enhance some of those technologies. Software distribution, for example. We have a very, very easy to use wizard to deploy software. We let you batch multiple pieces of software or bulk deploy multiple pieces of software in one wizard. We have templates. Templates will help provide those common settings that you need to configure when you're creating software or deploying software. So you don't have to worry about forgetting some value or trying to remember to set some configuration switch to make your software work or your deployment work. Oops, the button didn't work. There you go. If you're a customer that utilizes Configuration Manager for operating system deployments, and you do Pixie deployments, so bare metal deployments, you know that Pixie is not a very intuitive interface to work through. So almost everybody either creates very complex task sequences to guide end users through that deployment process, or you have some sort of an OSD front end. We have an OSD front end that we've released with version 2 of our solution called Commence. Commence is our OSD front end for bare metal deployments or reinstallations of existing operating systems. And if you come to next week's webinar on Windows 10 deployment, I'll show you what the Commence solution looks like. Then lastly, in the terms of reporting, we give you an easy to use and interpret dashboard. As soon as you load the CMP, that gives you some high value data right off the get-go. In area of reporting, which everybody uses reports, you know, in Configuration Manager, there's close to 500 reports now. It takes a while to weed through those to find the reports you want. So with the CMP, you pick and choose what reports you want to have access to, and those are the only reports that you would see when you go to the reporting load inside the CMP. So only exposing the reports that you need to have access to that are providing value for your job function. Now, we're not promoting this as a one-to-one replacement of the Configuration Manager console. So if you're a ConfigMan admin who lives and breathes Configuration Manager, you're going to stay in the console the vast majority of your time. However, you might be at a meeting and not have access to your laptop. You don't have to RDP into a server or something. You can just load a web browser and get access to it and do a quick software deployment. What we're really targeting this at is those three personas in the middle. The service desk analyst. He just needs to look up some inventory data, maybe deploy some software. Maybe he needs to find some data out. So very, very simple, easy things to do. Desktop server support. Maybe you need to kick off a re-imaging of a computer. So easy to do that. IT management, they don't need a lot of stuff. They just want to run some reports. So give them a node that only has reporting in it and just those half dozen reports that they really need. Now, end users will be happier because of the fact that they're taken care of more quickly. So their problems are resolved more quickly because it's easier for the service desk to do their jobs and get the end user supported. Okay, let's go ahead and jump over and show you what this looks like. So I'll go back to my demo environment. And I'm just going to show you very quickly here in Internet Explorer is the full CMP interface. And I'm not going to go through it in a lot of detail here at all. I just want to show you a couple things. First off, you see the dashboard. So you see some basic Configuration Manager data up above, how many computers, users you have, what your client health rate and client activity rates are, which can be important for you for deploying software or patches, what your clients are by operating system. And you see as I hover over any of these, a tooltip pops up to let you know more detail. What my deployment status is. So think about the deployments node in Configuration Manager. You go there and you got a whole list of these, and you have to look at that percentage compliant column. Here we're giving you, you know right away, I've got one success deployment, I've got one error deployment, and I got 5 of them that have unknown status. So very easy to figure out what I want to look at, and that's the one red guy. And same thing for my patches. Patches just by missing updates by severity. On the left-hand side is what we call the navigation pane or the navigation menu. This is where I would go to manage computers in my environment. So if I want to deploy software to computers, I want to set UDA relationships, I want to clone or clean a computer, I can do that very easily from the computers node. Users node, here's all my users I have in my environment, and I want to, again, manage UDA or deploy software to users. Here's all the software. So I want to go ahead and manage my software, deploy software. I want to distribute the content. I want to remove content. I want to see where it is targeted. Task sequences, custom task sequences, operating system deployment task sequences. I can go ahead and create and deploy those. Deployment status. So you saw that kind of in the dashboard. So here's the dashboard, but in a row type format, a table type format. So it's very easy to figure out what I need to look at. I need to look at the one guy here that says error. So that's the one deployment I want to go look at because I got an error condition. I can see it's one client has reported an error on that piece of software. This guy down here is green. I don't need to go look at it because I know it's all success. So easier to see the status, including the number of resources in that in each of those conditions for that deployment without having to go to the deployments node in monitoring workspace, click your deployment, then click view status. If you integrate with MDT, you have MDT roles here, so I can go ahead and manage the software there. Then here's reports. So reports allows me to, again, I only have 5 reports here linked. That's all the max I'm going to see in any scenario now, unless I go and link more reports in. And then down at the bottom is a new tray. This is where I can create new computers. I can deploy software. I can create new software, applications or packages. I can create task sequences, either OSD-based task sequences or custom task sequences. I can create new MDT roles. And then in the upper right, if you have access, here's the settings. Settings let you control your environment. So for example, I'm going to log in here in just a second as a desktop support person. So let me show you how easy it is to configure that. All I do is go to security settings. I've already added my security group called desktop support, which is an Active Directory group. So I've already added it. So now I go to security rights. I pick the security group I want, desktop support. And then I just designate to browse, which means the navigation menu over here on the left. What does he have access to? You can see when I log in here momentarily, it's going to have computers, users, software, MDT roles, task sequences, but not the dashboard. He'll see reports, but he won't see software deployment status, won't see the events node, which I have here, won't see the dashboard. When he does software distribution, notice some cool controls we have over here. He cannot deploy to the built-in collections. So all systems, all desktop and server clients, all unknown devices, all unknown systems and all mobile devices, can't deploy to those. He can't deploy to AD groups by default, cannot deploy to servers. So he can only deploy to workstations or users. When he does deploy software, he can only add one resource to a collection in a single deployment process, and I'm only allowing him to deploy one piece of software at a time, although you can certainly, by default, it's unlimited. So with that background, and now that you've seen the interface as an admin, I've gone ahead and loaded Chrome, and in Chrome, I've gone ahead and logged in as my desktop support person. So first thing you see on the navigation menu, there's no dashboard. There's no events, there's no deployments. I've taken those away from him, so they don't have access to it. If I go down to the new menu, notice there's no MDT roles, there's no software. So can't create applications, can't create packages, can't create MDT roles. And in the upper right, there's no drop down under the username, so he can't do any settings. So the scenario here for help desk is Wally calls in and says, hey, John, I want this piece of software. I saw Wally, I saw somebody doing this thing with the zooming thing, and I want this piece of software. Okay, let's go and deploy that software to you. What's your computer name, Wally? Wally doesn't know, which most users aren't going to know. So here I can see I only see workstations as my admin. Over here I see workstations and servers as the full admin, but as my desktop support person, I'm only giving them access to workstations. So I'm going to go ahead and search by Wally. Okay, Wally, are you on your normal computer? Yep, I'm on a normal computer. So I search on Wally, and that says, okay, your computer is client 7. So I pick client 7, and now I can go down here and look at the bottom, add remove programs. Is that software already deployed and installed to your computer, and you just don't know where to find it? So I can very easily look down here, and nope, not installed. Is it currently deployed to your computer? So I look at deployments, nope, I don't see Zoom it listed there. All right, let's verify your computer has enough resources. So I'll right-click client 7, and it maybe hopefully comes through, but there's some of these actions that are available and some are not available. So I could do an inventory summary. I can deploy software. I can manage user device affinity, and I can run some external tools. But I can't reinstall the OS. I can't edit. I can't clear, clone, clear Pixie, or delete. Those are unavailable to me through the role-based administration. I did not give access to those features. So let's go ahead and do inventory summary. Let's see if your computer can support the software. So your hardware last scan date is current. So I should have pretty good inventory because it is up to date. you got the current 1706 client. It's currently listed as healthy client. If I go to hardware, we'll see that, yeah, your CPU is good. You have free disk space. You have enough memory. Your operating system supports Zoom It. Okay, that's good. I can click on the software node. I can verify what software is installed again. It's not there. I can see that it's not targeted. I can verify the services that are running on your computer because there may be an issue with a known issue with the service and a piece of software. Nope, no issue there. We go to network tab. I see your network adapter is good. Client tab. Here's where I will see, again, it's healthy, the version of the client, what collections you're already a member of, and I'll see your patch status. Here's all the software updates you have applied. Here's all the software updates that are available that have been targeted to you. So you've got a lot of patching to do, but you're good to go. So you're good to go with that. So, all right, so everything's looking cool there. Now, one of the things we have here is the ability, let me verify your computer's up and running right now. So let me go to external tools, and we have ping built in. So I'll go ahead and say, do that, and we're seeing that, yep, ping's responding back, so I know that your computer's up and running. Well, let's just say that the hardware inventory was out of date. So now what I could do is I could force it by doing a right click, external tools, kicking off one of those free tools we have called Remote Manage, which you can integrate with the CMP. You see it's connecting up to client 7. It's running a bunch of PowerShell commands down there to get data from that client. And as it does, these tabs across the top light up. In other words, they get the data there. So I could go here, and here's an action. I could say right there, initiate hardware inventory. So force a client to initiate a hardware inventory cycle. Or maybe I want to go look at your configuration manager client log files because I want to look at something in troubleshooting. I can go to collect update if I want to. Maybe I want to go to the other tab and kick off remote control or remote desktop. Maybe I want to reboot your computer because I see that it's got reboot pending true. Now, in my case, it's false, but if I see true there, I can go ahead and do a reboot on your computer. Maybe I want to go ahead and kill a process or start a process. I can go ahead and do that, provided I have the rights to do so. So you can launch off some external tools as well. Anyway, I want to do software distribution. So I'm going to show you two different ways of doing software distribution, but the easy way for most people is just going to be a right click, do deploy software, and this is our software distribution wizard. And it was Zoom It that I wanted, so I'll go ahead and search for Zoom It. There it is. I find Zoom It. I go ahead and click that, add it to my list. Notice down here, it says one software item selected and max allowed 1. Remember when I showed you the security, it was set to only allowing one user or one piece of software at a time. You can set that to other values. I got the one piece of software there. Next thing I'll have to do is pick my computer, which I already have client 7 in there because I was on it when I started the software distribution wizard, so it's already there. But if I need to, I could go ahead and load a deployment scope of all my workstations and pick my computer I want, or all my users that I have access to, pick my users. I could even load a configuration manager query, like all systems, but it only shows me my clients because I only have access to clients. I don't have access to servers. I can even import from a file. But again, I wanted client 7, so I'll go ahead and take him. And again, max allowed is 1. I can't add a second computer to this deployment just because of security. Normally you would be able to. So now I just go to, so I picked my software, picked my client, and now I just go ahead and load something called a deployment template. So if I load a deployment template and I only have one available, workstation packages, it sets the timing for me automatically, as well as some other tabs that I don't get to see as a user of this type of deployment, because we want to make it as simple as possible. But I can initiate the fast client notification channel, so push this policy down to the client. So there we go. I had to pick the software, pick the computer, and then load a template. That was it. And I click finish, and I'm done. I didn't pick a collection. I didn't pick a lot of other settings. Now, you do have the ability, if you want to allow them to do so, if I go back to the full admin, take that same computer, do deploy software, and what I loaded on the other guy was a quick software deployment because that's the only thing he had access to. If you have you guys that know more about what's going on, you can do a standard software deployment. And just let me show you that real quick so you can see a couple of differences. So now I can go ahead and pick multiple pieces of software and load it in at the same time. Because now I got 3 pieces of software. I can deploy that with one wizard. In Configuration Manager, that would be 3 separate wizards that I have to run. I can do them all with one if I want to. Click Next, and now for the full software distribution, I'm an admin, so I see those built-in collections, and I actually get to pick a collection. Remember, my desktop support guy, he didn't get to pick a collection. It automatically uses this feature called Create a Collection on Demand. So it was going to create a collection for that piece of software, add the computer to it, and do the deployment. But if I know what I'm doing, I can go ahead and pick the collection I want, like I want this to all my Windows 7 clients. I can do that. And then if I can add in other additional resources if I choose to do so. So here you can see I see servers as well as my workstations, and I can add multiple in because I'm not limited. And then lastly, if I go to the Deployments node tab, here you see there's the deployment settings, user experience alerts. The desktop support guy didn't see those. All he saw was scheduling because of the quick software deployment wizard that we gave him. Now let me show you the power of a template. If I do a load a template, and the one that was loaded, the other guy was workstation applications, notice it set require administrator approval automatically. It didn't hide anything here. It didn't say anything on alerts. But let me go ahead and change this template to a server-based application template. And notice now in user experience, it's hiding in Software Center and going to ignore maintenance windows for software installation. It set this as a required application deployment and set the schedule as soon as possible. So the templates are providing those default values for you so that I don't have to remember to set these configuration settings the way I want them to be. So very, very integrated as far as the ability of giving you that control over what's happening, flexibility, as well as being able to remove some items from specific users as they need to be used. Now let me show you one other thing here as I'm logged on as a full admin. If I go back to Wally, remember when I did this as a desktop support person, it only showed client 7. And what did I do? Oops, am I filtering on anything? Should come back and show me, let me try that again. It should come back and show me Wally, unless I remove my relationship. There we go. Client 7 and primary. Desktop support guy didn't see primary because he didn't have access to servers. He only had access to workstations. But let me say, well, Wally shouldn't be on primary. So if I go ahead and do a right click on primary, I can do edit user device affinity. And now I can go ahead and say, yeah, Wally shouldn't be there. Let me go ahead and remove Wally. And that goes ahead and makes that change in Configuration Manager. All these things we're doing here, they're creating things in Configuration Manager, whether it's creating software, creating collections, creating deployments, distributing content, and so on. Those are getting pushed out to Configuration Manager. However, the cool thing is, I was logged on as user 2. If I go to Configuration Manager, go to Security, look at Administrative Users, there's no groups here, and there's no user 2 listed here. So all the stuff that's happening in Configuration Manager is happening in the context of this one account, which I gave as a full administrator and has access to all the collections. So he's doing all the work in Configuration Manager. Inside the CMP, I'm controlling the role-based administration there because it's a little more granular access than you have in Configuration Manager. So it's easier for me to do that. So your users don't have to have any rights to Config Manager. So what that tells you is if user 2 were to log on to my computer, he wouldn't be able to log into Config Manager because of the fact he didn't have an account in Configuration Manager. But he does have an account in the CMP. So user 2 can be right over here, get in upper right-hand corner, logged in as user 2. He can do all the work that I've given him access to because of the fact that I have created an account for him and configured his security inside the CMP. Now, lastly, if I go to task sequences here, I don't give him any task sequences. So let me go back over as a full admin and go to task sequence. Here's how hard it is to give access to objects. He should have access to be able to upgrade somebody to Windows 10. So just hit permissions and add in his support group, which is desktop support. Click OK. Now I go back over to Chrome. I hit refresh. And there he's got the task sequence. So now he's allowed to deploy that software. And reports, again, I gave him access to all 5 of the reports, but He only has access to whatever reports I give him access to. So I get to control that through right-clicking and then doing permissions. This guy doesn't have rights to give sign permission, so he can't do that. He can just run reports. But so you see the power of that. So very cool. There's a lot of other features available in the CMP, but again, we're getting close to the top of the hour, so I'll not go a whole lot more deep into it. On users, again, I can deploy software if I have rights to, and then do that user device affinity feature. So I can do UDA. I can add more users here, or computers. So if I say client, yeah, he should be added to client 10 as well. I can go ahead and configure that, provided I've got the rights to do so. And now that will set that inside Configuration Manager. Software, you can see I only have access to, see this view only gives me access to Microsoft software. But I can take a piece of software like this one. I can look at the targeted resources. So I can see who's targeted. I can see what distribution points this content's on. I can manage that. So if I right click and I have the ability to distribute content, which this user doesn't have, but I could add distribution points or remove distribution points from this content. And I can see what the deployment status deployments are for this. And currently this one has deployed to that collection, and I see unknown as my status on it. So it just depends upon what features you give them, what access user is going to have inside the CMP to do whatever. But the great thing is you get to control that as the administrator. Now I mentioned for the last thing, then we'll go ahead and go to close this out. The last thing is that in Config Manager, user 2 has no rights. And if I were to look in Config Manager, it's going to say everything was done by the CMP account. Well, I want to track to see who's really utilizing the product. So you have this events node here, which my admin has access to. I didn't give rights to it for my user. So if I just go there, and let me go to all, you'll see in the upper right-hand corner, it tells me username. So I see that user 2 was doing some work. So I can tell who did what, and I can see that user 2 went here and did some work. And if I go and go to like software deployment, here we see user 2 initiated policy download. So I can, again, tell who was doing work inside any of the different features. Administrator went ahead and created a package or deployment of a package. So I have cool auditing capabilities inside the CMP as well as in Configuration Manager. So anyway, that's just a quick look at the Cireson portal for Configuration Manager. Again, a web-based interface, so you're not tied to a local installation. Very, very easy to control which features individual security groups have access to. So they'll only see what you give them access to. So you get to control that very, very simply and easily. And they don't have to have any rights to Configuration Manager. So a much easier interface to look at. And one of the cool things is, again, remember the inventory summary. When you're looking at this hardware inventory summary, think to yourself, Resource Explorer and Configuration Manager that has those hundreds of different attributes available. Here's a couple dozen different attributes that we think are important for the help desk person or service desk person to have access to in order for them to do their job. So that's what the functionality is here. And one of the main benefits outside of the templates, which you'll see more on the templates in next couple of presentations we're doing over the next couple of weeks. All right, with that, we're about at the top of the hour, so let's go ahead and close this out and get you guys answer your questions. So if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and type them up and send them into the interface, and I'll look at those in just a moment. So just a quick summary for you. System Center Configuration Manager is fantastic. I've been doing this since 1994 as far as Configuration Manager, and prior to that, it was Systems Management Server. So 20 some years. I know Microsoft were just touting the 25th anniversary of it. That's since they started working on the product in 1992, but it actually shipped in 1995. But I love it, and it's because it does have as much power as it has, as much capabilities, and I never learn all of it because it is so complex. There's always something new to learn about it. It's great, and you really need to be on the current branch release. You shouldn't be on any ConfigMan 2012 releases, certainly not ConfigMan 2007, because it's out of product support. So staying up to date is easy to do with the updates and servicing feature. And if you want to allow more people in your organization to have access to the power or some of the power of Configuration Manager, you might want to look at the Cireson portal for Configuration Manager to help you with the web interface to extend that reach in your environment. If you do want to look at it further, it's very, very easy for you to get started. There's a free community version of the Cireson portal for Configuration Manager. You can access from the link at the bottom of the slide, cireson.com. If you just go there, it's on the front page, but you can go cireson.com/config manager-portal, and it'll take you directly there. You can download the community edition. You can also request a trial key that will let you use the full edition in your environment for 30 days. So again, you use that same URL there, and you can gain access to that and utilize that and give it a shot in your environment. So Community Edition has a few limitations to it. It's more of a read-only edition. You can still look at your hardware inventory summary, but you can't do a lot of other things, like you can't do reporting, you can't deploy software. You can't do anything that's going to modify or affect Configuration Manager with the Community Edition, but the trial version, you have full access to it for 30 days. All right, so with that, we're at the questions time period. So go ahead and hit us with your questions. I'm sure there must be something in there on Configuration Manager itself or on the Cireson portal for Configuration Manager that somebody has a question on. So go ahead and type those into the questions panel. I can go ahead and answer those for you. Again, this presentation is being recorded or has been recorded. I'll leave the recording going as I go through Q&A if there are any questions coming up, so that those will be recorded as well. And as soon as we're done with the presentation, I'll stop the recording and get it converted over, and then I'll hand it off to the gals internally, and they'll get them posted up to the website. Again, it's Vimeo, vimeo.com/Team Cireson, all one word. And you'll be able to find this recording up there if you want to go through it again, or if you want to pass it off to somebody else in your organization. So are there any questions? I'm not seeing anything in the questions panel. I find it hard to believe that I answered all the questions you guys would have just by demonstrations and discussion. But I'm not seeing anything. Nothing popping up. Okay, if there aren't any questions, then I'll let you guys go and you can get off with your day. For resources available, you got the resource that I showed you on the previous slide. You can go access for our end of things. And of course, you've got Peter and Joseph who are on the line, and you can contact them as well if you want to get more information from their company as a partner that can help you out with anything. And I assume that you got a nice, easy website for them to get to, Peter?
Yep, for sure. Dilignet.com.
Yeah, it's pretty simple how to be able to get there. So dilignet.com or Cireson.com, either of us can help you out. And if we both know how to get hold of each other. So if you have a question that comes to us that's appropriate for those guys, we can very easily route that out to those and vice versa. So we work a lot together. So very, very easy to get the support that we need from each other. So I'm not seeing anything as far as questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out. I'll stop the recording. I'll end the webinar, and we'll get the recording posted up to the Team Cireson site up on Vimeo, and you guys will have access to that. Please do join us for the next 2 Mondays. Next week, we'll be talking about Windows 10 deployment and management, and then the week after that, which I believe is the 16th or whatever it is, whatever that date is. Yeah, I guess today's the 2nd, so it'd be the 16th. Will be, or for you guys, it's the day after, sorry, is on software distribution and best practices for software distribution, numerous different ways of doing that. So with that, again, you guys have a great rest of your day. Again, thanks for taking an hour out of your time to spend listening to me babble on for a while. So I appreciate it. And you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. And yes, we'll see you guys the next couple of Tuesdays. Thanks all. Have a good rest of your day. Bye now.
Bye.